Avram Zagdon Chaim's teachings on Parshat Ekev. Parshat Ekev starts off with HaKadosh Baruch Hu presenting a condition on his commitment to keep his part of the covenant with Israel. It says like this: "And it will follow your heeding of these laws and your keeping of them and your observance of them, that Hashem Elokecha will keep with you the covenant and the loving kindness, the chesed, which he swore to your forefathers." And we see this in the words of Rashi: "If you heed, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will keep his bris with you." So we see that according to this condition set by Hashem Yitbarach, that if Israel do not observe the mitzvot, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also not obligated, so to say, to keep the covenant and the promise of loving kindness which he swore to fulfill with our forefathers. Later on in the Parsha, the Torah relates how Moshe Rabbeinu ascended Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, in order to receive the tablets of the covenant, and afterwards the sin of the golden calf, which resulted in Moshe Rabbeinu descending and shattering the first tablets which he had received. And afterwards the Torah tells us about the receiving of the second set of tablets of the covenant, which embody the totality of the Torah and the wisdom that we are familiar with today. There is a connection between the way the Parsha begins with "and it will follow your heeding these laws," which places his promise to give reward under the condition that Israel keep his mitzvot, and the fact that this Parsha includes the story of the receiving of the second tablets of the covenant, Luchot Shneim. So what is the connection? The Holy Zohar in Parshat Bereshis explains this series of events like this: "And why did the Luchot fall and break? Because the letter Vav was ejected and flew out of the tablets." And this Vav is the Vav from the word Vayitzer, and he formed, which is Vav and then Yud, another Yud, Tzadik, Resh, Vayitzer. And Israel were not able to receive them because they fell and broke, and this caused the destruction of the first and second temples. And he gave them 2 other tablets from the side of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And from this side of the Torah was given in the format of permitted and forbidden, in which there is life coming from the right side and death coming from the left side. These second tablets which Israel received, they came from the side of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, within which there is good and bad, permitted and prohibited, life and death. And this precisely is the condition of "if you heed the laws." If you heed and keep the laws, then you will receive reward and life. And if not, chas v'shalom, the opposite will happen. And this itself comes from the second tablets, in which the Torah was given to Israel with a condition from the right side: if you keep and observe, you will be rewarded. And from the left side, if you do not keep and do not observe, then there is punishment. After we have noticed and recognized the connection between the beginning of the Parsha and the presenting of the story of the first and second tablets later on, we can now understand what the Holy Zohar is telling us: that the first tablets fell and broke because the letter Vav departed and flew up from them. This Vav, from the word Vayitzer, the Vav flew away, and then the Luchot fell and were broken, and afterwards Israel received a different set of tablets, which had a different format, which didn't exist in the first ones, the format of permitted and forbidden, of good and bad. This Vav is a great hidden secret. What is this Vav? What is its story and essence? What was the function of this Vav? This Vav was a connector. It connected the two Yuds. The letter Vav in Lashon HaKodesh stands for the word and, which connects two things. In the word Vayitzer, and he formed, there are two Yuds, Vav, Yud, Yud, Tzadik, Resh. And the letter Vav was the element connecting them. What are these two Yuds? One represents the good inclination, the Yetzer HaTov, and one represents the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. One Yud corresponds with the mitzvot, and the second Yud corresponds within the transgressions, the avirot. And the letter Vav is the element which combines and unites these two inclinations, these two parts of our existence and perception. The letter Vav itself does not belong to either of the two parts. It does not include or represent any kind of good inclination or evil inclination. It takes no sides. It has nothing to do with commandments and transgressions within the letter Vav. Both of these components are one. They are included within their source, and therein everything is one. Everything is goodness. But when are there good inclinations and evil inclinations, mitzvot and avirot? Only when this Vav departs and disappears. When the connection, unity, and oneness are not there, then these two Yuds fall and break, and then each one has to take on a different appearance and to place itself on a different side. One has to go to the right and one has to go to the left. On one side, the good inclination positions itself, and on the other side, the evil inclination is positioned. They now have to manifest themselves in different ways, similar to two people battling with each other. The good inclination tries to overcome evil inclination, and the same thing in the other direction. The entire Torah that we are familiar with today came from the second tablets. This Torah is entirely without the original Vav. This is a Torah in which the two Yuds are separated and distanced from each other. And when they are distanced, then there is a mitzvah to attempt to follow the Yud which corresponds with the good inclination. And whoever connects with a Yud which corresponds with the evil inclination has transgressed. Therefore, the Holy Torah, given this way, cannot begin with the first and most primary letter, the letter Aleph. It must begin with the second letter, the letter Beis. As we see, Bereshit. In the beginning, Bet, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yud, Taf. And the letter Bet represents the numerical value of 2, the number and symbol of duality. So this is as if the Torah is saying two rishis, two beginnings, cluing us into the concept of a dual beginning. One beginning coming from the Yud of goodness, and the second beginning coming from the Yud of the negative. And the letter Aleph remains hidden. The letter which represents unity and oneness doesn't show up. What is this Aleph, which isn't written at the beginning of the Torah? Take a look at the shape of the letter Aleph. Notice that it has 3 components. There is one Yud on the top and one Yud on the bottom, written upside down, and a Vav drawn diagonally between them, serving as a connecting component between the two Yuds. So we can now see that the letter Aleph includes these two Yuds, the Yud of the good inclination and the Yud of the evil inclination, and there is the Vav in between, connecting and uniting them, and by considering that the shape of the Vav itself actually can be derived by combining and placing two Yuds together, one on top of the other, we can now realize that the Vav represents the combination and oneness of these two Yuds together, the essence of entirely one, entirely goodness. You should know that wherever there is a manifestation of the essence of this Vav, which combines and connects the good inclination and the evil inclination, which connects the upper Yud and the lower Yud, then these two components, the good inclination and the evil inclination, do not exist anymore in their regular form, but rather they are constantly switching around. The Yud, which was on top, descends and becomes the lower Yud, and the one which was on the bottom ascends and becomes the upper Yud. And then they switch around again and again, to the point where it is impossible to discern which is the good and which is the bad, which is the upper one and which is the lower one. And all of this takes place through the presence of the Vav, which is in between, because this Vav itself is actually the combination of these two Yuds, which have become one. And once they have become one, they can be exchanged constantly and continuously every single moment. Therefore, the Torah uses the term Ekev, which has two meanings. One refers to the cause and effect, and to stating a condition. And explained above, the regular translation of V'haya Ekev Tishma'un is, and it will follow your heeding of the laws. But there is a second meaning of the word Ekev, when given different vowels, which is the word Akev, the heel, the lowest part of the body, the end, representing the Yud which is at the bottom, and cannot be elevated and switched up with the upper one, which cannot become the head. Whoever is at the bottom, in the state of the heel, remains there, and whoever is situated at the top, the upper Yud, will remain there till the end. And all of this static situation is due to the lack of the intermediary Vav. And without the Vav, we are left with the Torah of the second tablets, the Torah which we live by today, the Torah with a right side and its good inclination, and is separate and distanced from the other side, the left side and its evil inclination. The Torah we have now was given to us from the side of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and therein we have forbidden and permitted the evil inclination and the good inclination. This is the Torah. This is our holy Torah. Chayenu ve'orech yamenu, our life and our longevity. This is the incredible Torah given to us by Moshe Rabbeinu, alav hashalom, brought down in the form of the second tablets, which he merited for us through his Mesirut Nefesh for all Israel. But this Torah came with a condition. If we heed and keep the mitzvot, then we will receive the promised reward. But if not, chas v'shalom, then we deserve the opposite. Therefore, we have nowhere to turn to, and nothing to rely on, other than the guidance of our sages of blessed memory, our holy rabbis and great tzaddikim, who have been showing us the way, leading us in the paths of observing in the best possible way all of the halachas given by Hashem Yisbarach in the Torah and elaborated in the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch. But the question arises, what about those of Israel who are not observing and keeping the Torah as we know of today? What will be the fate of those who took the left road, those who followed the evil inclination, the way of the second Yud, those who didn't listen, who didn't hear, who didn't follow the mitzvahs written in the Torah, the ones who didn't instill in themselves the way of emunah, of belief? What will their fate be? What will be the fate of those who dropped out, of those who chas v'shalom did not stand up to the challenge and did not find the strength in themselves to heed and observe the mitzvahs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This person, the one who fell and dropped out of the keeping of the mitzvahs of the Torah, he did not listen, he did not observe, he did not follow the rules. Does he have any hope left? Yes, he does. But what hope can there be? What is this hope based on? It depends on the Vav. This Vav, in which everything is turned into goodness, into oneness. This Vav, which is the combination and unification of the two Yuds, of the two inclinations, the oneness of the combination of the mitzvahs and the averos together, the unification and oneness of everything. And this Vav is the hope of all of those who are situated at the bottom within the akev, in the heel. This Vav is the hope of all of those who did not heed and observe what they were supposed to observe. This is the hope of all of those who were imprisoned by the left side, the side of the evil inclination. This Vav is the hope of all of those who fell and sinned, and even the hope of those who transgressed the entire Torah thousands of times, and not only the hope of these people, but for everyone. This Vav is the hope. What is this Vav? Who is this Vav? This Vav is the Tzaddik Yesod Olam, the righteous person who is the foundation of the world, the greatest Tzaddik who himself is the essence of this Vav. And in the eyes of this Tzaddik, there is no such thing as good and evil. There is no good inclination and no evil inclination by him. There are, so to say, no mitzvahs and averas. He sees only one thing, Hashem Yitbarach, and pure Nishmot Israel. And therefore, this great tzaddik can transform things. He can switch and interchange these two yuds between those who are up above and those who are down below. He can interchange them back and forth, time after time, until they become unified. He can unify the good and the bad, and transform the two of them into total goodness. And this is written in Tehillim and the Psalms. And a tzaddik will blossom like a palm tree. In Lashon HaKodesh, the palm tree is called Tamar. And this word has another meaning, Temura, exchanging, interchanging, transformation. Because this great tzaddik has the essence of the Vav, he is the great doctor and healer of the entire world. He is the hope of the world. He is the hope, deliverance, and the liberation of all of those who fell from observance of the mitzvahs, because this tzaddik has the ability to reveal that these two yuds are actually one and the same thing. The good inclination and the evil inclination are one essence at their source, and this can be revealed only by this great tzaddik. Because according to the Torah that we know of today, there is a separation and a clearly defined distance between the two yuds. But the tzaddik Yesod Olam, who comes with the essence of the Vav, he is a bridge. He can connect. He is the unifying essence. And within this tzaddik, everything is total goodness. He reveals that the two opposites are truly one essence, and he knows how to interchange them back and forth, to take the upper to the bottom and the lower to the top. This concept is brought forth by Rabbi Natan in Likutei Halachos, in the Halachos of the Beis HaKnesses, Halacha 5, section 12. The nullification of the Torah is the existence of the true tzaddik. Rabbi Natan changed the original statement of our sages of blessed memory regarding the nullification of the Torah, the deviation from the Torah, the bittul of the Torah, being the cause of its existence and foundation of the kiyum of the Torah. And here, Rabbi Natan relates to the connection between the bitul of the Torah and the existence of the tzaddik. The kiyum of the tzaddik, because the true tzaddik has the essence of the Vav, and his primary existence and purpose comes forth precisely where there is nullification of the Torah, at which time he arises and comes to defend Am Yisrael and to give them existence, even when they did not heed the mitzvahs as they should have done, because the true tzaddik, who is this Vav, comes to reveal the first tablets in which there was no forbidden or permitted, in which there was no good inclination or evil inclination, in which there is only the tree of life, which is entirely goodness and oneness. And by revealing this, he can extract and bring up and save all of those who fell into transgressions from being punished, and thereby he can reveal precisely from within these people a new Torah, a new Da'at. And this is brought forth by Rabbi Natan in another place in Likutei Halachos, Halachos of Mincha, Halacha 5, section 7. It says like this: the primary salvation of the poor person is done by the true tzaddik of the generation, the one of the loftiest stature, who can make himself poor, and this is the tzaddik who can sweeten and transform all of the small-mindedness, mochin dekatnut, and the ultimate essence of the smallest, to the most ultimate degree, beyond which there is no further to go, and he is able to sweeten and transform all of this at its most supreme source, at the awesome and most lofty root, which is the essence of nothingness, of ayin, which is beyond any kind of human perception, beyond all consciousness of greatness of mind, mochin de gadlut, or smallness of mind, mochin de katnut, where everything is totally one. And this essence of the Mashiach is the aspect of being poor, as the verse states, a poor man riding a donkey, through whom the essential salvation of the poor and the poverty stricken will be fulfilled, because this tzaddik knows how to transform all of the small-mindedness, mochin dekatnut, which is the uppermost root from which all poverty is derived. And there is no poverty or lack more than the lack of das and consciousness of the Torah and the mitzvahs, no lack worse than the lack of closeness with Hashem Yisbarach, chas v'shalom. Therefore, the primary redemption of Israel will be brought forth by the great true tzaddik who has this essence of the Mashiach, who becomes one with the poor and poverty stricken, the ones who are so very distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and who have ruined and impaired so much and have done the things they have done. And in spite of all this, the compassion of this tzaddik overcomes everything, and he lowers himself and descends into their realm, and he makes himself like them and even worse than them. And he can actually do this honestly, because he is the most humble person on the face of the earth. The mochin de gadlut and the mochin de katnut, the greatness of mind and the smallness of mind, mentioned here by Rabbi Natan. These are the aspect of these two yuds, the upper and the lower, the good inclination and the evil inclination. And within the da'at, the consciousness of the true tzaddik, both of these are exactly the same. They are only one essence. Good and evil are one, because he is totally beyond the level of awareness and consciousness that we are familiar with. And since the katnut and the gadlut are combined within him into one simple unified essence, he can transform everything into something else altogether, to bring forth a new das, a new consciousness, new hope for everyone.